right, brothers and sisters, this is Tenacious Recovery, and I'd like to welcome all the brothers and sisters of sobriety on the podcast. Thanks again for tuning in. My name is Vinny. I'm an alcoholic and an addict.
And I'm Sam, alcoholic and an addict.
And we are coming to you today from the great city of Worcester, Massachusetts. Beautiful place. Love it. It gives me great pleasure to introduce our guest, Mikey Leggs from Worcester, Mass.
What's up, everybody? I'm Mikey. I'm an addict in recovery. Thanks for having me on the show, guys. Thanks for having me on the podcast. I appreciate you.
Yeah, of course.
Love having you, brother. Love having you. So let me ask you, how long have you been clean?
I've been clean for 14 years. May 22nd of 2010 is the day that I entered treatment for the last time.
Very nice.
So, more often than not, I would say our guests have been not close personal friends of ours, but people that we have direct either working or personal relationships with.
Sure.
This is the first get. I just met this guy for the first time yesterday, and I would say that this is the first guest that someone said, you should have Legs on the podcast. He's a good guy.
Nice.
I heard about him.
Yeah.
I knew that he was a good guy, but really, I don't really know much about you, brother. So,
well, we're going to find out a bunch. We're going to find out a bunch now. And I always say, you can tell us as much as you want or as little as you want. It's your story. I always tell people, it's your story. You tell it if you want. If there's stuff that you don't want, well, that's up to you too. But I like to always start the podcast off by going back to the beginning. You said you got out of treatment for the last time, or went into treatment for the last time, May of 14 years ago, I think you said?
2010, yeah.
So 2010. So go back to the beginning. Let me tell the audience how this all started.
Yeah, no, that's great. That's a great question. So for years, I was afraid of my story. I was afraid to tell people a lot about me, a bit about me. So the truth of the matter is, I grew up in an adoptive family. I was an adopted child of a loving, caring family. But with that, with being adopted, comes a lot of uncertainty, right? It comes with a lot of second guessing myself, second guessing where I belong, do I fit in? Never really feeling that I found my tribe, right? So it's I constantly felt disconnected with people. I could be in a room with a bunch of people that love me, family members, and my thing was I was just so locked up in my head thinking do I belong here? Do I fit in? Do these people really want me around? Am I a burden to them? And it was just a story that I continuously told myself, throughout my whole life, and with that comes, feelings of restlessness, irritability, discontentment, insecurity. And my story really begins with I needed freedom. I sought freedom from what I was feeling and all the bullshit that I told myself, and just being locked up in my head. And that freedom came from drugs and alcohol. And before drugs and alcohol, the freedom came from praise from others, right? So I'd be the crash out guy at the party who would punch somebody in the face to get a rise out of my boys, or trying to be extra solid for the guys, and in high school I got in a ton of trouble because if I got a rise out of you, if I got some laughter out of you, I finally felt like I fit in, I belonged. I was with my guys. I was in high school. It was my only accolades I ever made in high school were teacher's worst nightmare, class clown, shit like that.
Right.
Yeah.
Not a whole lot to be proud of as far as later in life. I mean, we can look back on this stuff and realize this is why you got clean. But as you're going through it, that's kind of tough. It actually, when you think about some of the destruction, you see, punching somebody in the face at a party, and didn't do a thing to you. Yeah, you must have thought back on that too and said, I shouldn't have done that. I feel really terrible. No coping skills. Let's do some drugs.
Right? And then from in my story, for me personally, I just compiled guilt and shame, right? Because I never really I never lived being who I was innately, right? I always lived trying to portray an image of what I wanted you to think I was.
You were just seeking affirmations.
It was a stage character.
They call that not being in touch with your authentic self.
Imposter syndrome.
Imposter syndrome. That's right.
But like it for me, like that imposter syndrome was the defense mechanism that allowed me to like survive in the moment, because in how I was feeling internally, like it was like I had to live in that state, because without it I'd feel so alone and disconnected. And that's why, it's cliche now, like it's very popular to say like the opposite of addiction is connection. But like what that means is like I need to connect with myself, I need to connect with my higher power, and I need to connect with people. And the only way I can connect with my higher power is through people, right? I have to connect with my peers, my tribe. I have to find my tribe. And like, there's a lot of shit that happened before I found recovery that helped me align with my tribe. But like that journey, I'm in the right place at the right time at all times. And like I needed that journey. Like I'm thankful to this day for my addiction, because without my addiction, like I don't have my career today. I don't have the family that I have today. I don't have the compassion for others that I have today. I don't have the spiritual principles that I try to live by on a day-to-day basis today.
You're a father, right?
I'm a father, yeah.
Think about how much of that you take into being a father.
Yeah.
Think about what kind of father you'd be if you didn't go through that. You probably still would be a father. That's the worst part.
Yeah, I'd still be a father. I'd have, not that I'm the greatest with coping skills and patience, but that would be,
buddy, it would look totally
10 times
different.
worse. Way different. And the one negative side of it though is like, I watch my son and I'm like, damn, I don't want him to have that malady like me. I don't want him to, I'm trying to prevent him from like all the pains and all the, the social anguish and stuff like that I face. But there's no really preventing it, right? Like kids have to go through it. They have to experience it. We just can like teach them and be good coaches and mentors.
I smell it in my oldest all the time. I'll like see it in the way she acts. Like, you can tell that she kind of is containing an emotion and she doesn't necessarily feel comfortable, or that she's like allowed to have it. And I'm like, listen, you got to talk about this right
now.
Exactly. My place to pull it out of her. Like she has to come to grips with it, and it eats me away. But also like, I'm not a fortune teller.
Right. And it goes back to powerlessness. We're like powerless over our kids and how they react to certain situations. And we're powerless over their defects too, as much as we want to shield them from the world and help them and not have them experience the same pain we did. I do the same with my son. It's like my son's mad and he has trouble like expressing his emotions, and I'm like, just tell me why, like just get it out, put it out there. Like pain shared is pain lessened. Like, you know what I mean? Like share your pain so you're not compiling more and more shit to the point where like you can no longer compile shit and you use a substance, for me.
Or something.
A thing. Yeah.
So, as far as your addiction, your actual addiction, a lot of people want to take us back to the very beginning.
Sure.
Like how old were you? What did you do? What was the situation like?
Yeah, 13 years old was my first drink. Stealing, like hanging out at my friend's house, robbing the liquor cabinet, replacing filling the vodka bottle up back with water. And we got all the vodka in our Poland Spring bottles, walking down Broadway, shit-faced, feeling that sense of like ease and comfort the minute the alcohol touches my throat. And like, I feel that burning sensation, and knowing that like, for the time being, this is the solution to everything externally that was going on with my life, and like running with that, and I just remember like my early high school years, 13, 14, my first experience with alcohol ended in alcohol poisoning, so and that initial event should have probably raised some red flags to me,
I feel like more often than not that's the case. Guys like, I drank out of a Poland Spring water bottle and I woke up and my friends had colored my face with marker. You know what I mean?
Right.
And that's such a common story, but
or like having your stomach pumped at the hospital, what I mean? Like, and it's just because they say in the big book, once I start, I can't stop, and once I stop, I can't stay stopped. Like I had no defense to stay stopped, right? My weeks consisted of getting in a ton of trouble in high school, getting kicked out of class and in-house suspensions and all that other stuff, and then feeling like so not okay in my own skin, so just shaken at all times, full of fears, doubts, and insecurities. Until like we'd sit outside a liquor store, a local liquor store in Revere, Chelsea, Everett, and until we got like that guy who was over 21 to go in the store and purchase us some alcohol, like we were just not okay. But once that alcohol was in our possession, like I knew I'd be okay. And that's like where the sickness of the disease comes through. It's like I'm not okay without it, and like abstinence feels like I'm doing time. Like those 4 days leading up until the Friday felt like I was legit doing time, like white knuckling it, like, I'm just not okay with self. I just cannot exist in the world as it is, and I needed something to free me from me. And like the alcohol worked every time. And like, then I could come out and play. I could talk to the ladies. I could bullshit with the boys. I could, put on that stage character and be that guy that like I never really could achieve without it,
That sounds very, very familiar. Very familiar. Because I kind of went through the same thing as far as you just needing that extra oomph to talk to those teenage girls, to kind of get loose. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's just I lived in my head, man. Like that, the only escape from me just being locked in my head and being my thoughts was just alcohol, and it freed me from me. And it was like the solution for a long time, until it wasn't, right? Until you burn every bridge, until you're a liability when you're out with the guys, until no woman wants you around because you're a stumbling, mumbling idiot, and you just cause all this chaos and destruction. Everywhere I went, it was just like I'd burn it down. I'd burn everything down. I'd burn everything good in my life down. Like I have a history of just making terrible choices, right? And that's why, like in my recovery, like God's will is so important to me, because like my will or anything that's in my control or possession that I make decisions about or on usually doesn't end up well. Like it doesn't end up in
even
any
in
good
sobriety.
situation. Even in sobriety,
especially in sobriety. I can tell you that firsthand.
Yeah, you got to pray on stuff,
Yeah.
Definitely. But so early on, did you find yourself getting in trouble by doing this stuff, or did you kind of avoid? I avoided trouble for a long time, but it caught up to me. How about you? Did you avoid trouble, or did you find it right away?
Yeah, so I avoided like major trouble, like arrests and things like that. I have been arrested and I've gone in trouble due to my addiction. But early on in recovery, it's almost like I sought out trouble, because like it wasn't just like the alcohol. It was more like the chaos I was addicted to, the lifestyle I was addicted to.
Yeah, chase the rush.
Chase the rush, right?
Yeah.
All this shit that like I was getting in trouble for provided like a dopamine rush, right? Like,
absolutely.
It also helped with the facade.
It helped with the facade.
For
like,
sure.
I was building on the guy that like I wanted the world to think I was, but I really wasn't quite that, So, yeah, I mean, the trouble was more like, it was violence, fights. I'm not some like big tough guy, but like I would just be so filled with anger and all like self-inflicted like just anger within me that I had to have an outlet, and that was like at bar fights and things like that, and I never felt good about it though. It always like laying my head on the pillow at night, like it was always heavy. It was never light. Like once I entered recovery and I did service work, speaking, things like that, my head became a little bit lighter. But back in those days, it's like, man, the feeling like laying down at night knowing like you caused all this harm and you're just really this person that you can't even stand yourself. It was like, I don't know, that being conflicted, man. It's painful.
That's pretty. That's a lot of guilt, actually.
Dude, I had the same thing. I couldn't even put a finger on it though. Like I wasn't sitting there taking an inventory and active use of everything I had done wrong that day, whether it was like to my family or I stole from a CVS or something like that. But I would go to sleep and I would be like, the world's coming to an end. You know what I mean? And I'm going down with it because I deserve that. And it was I mean, really, it was just anxiety. I didn't even know I had anxiety until I was like well into being sober.
Sure.
I always thought I was like cool, confident, whatever. That didn't affect me. But like, how many nights do we lie awake when we have to sit and wonder what's going on here?
Exactly.
I honestly can say 0 because I was always so bad
Yeah.
that when my head hit the pillow,
Yeah.
I was like out, like
Oh,
completely out.
No, yeah.
But I would wake up with crushing anxiety.
Yeah.
Like I would barely be able to breathe,
Yeah.
and I couldn't tell anybody. I've been clean for almost 38 years. So back in the 80s, like that, you just didn't make a habit out of saying how you felt deep inside
Right.
with your depression, your anxiety, and every other ism that you think you had. Like now we encourage people, talk to us, talk to me. What's going on? What are you feeling right now? Back then, I just literally walked around with crushing anxiety and depression.
Absolutely.
It was hard.
Well, like you said, it's like most nights you don't think anything, right? Because you don't go to sleep, you pass out.
Right.
And then you pass out, and then you come to in the morning. And at the time, like 2002-ish, there was cell phones, Nextels, and then you would like wait for the phone to ring or the beep beep to go off on a Nextel, the chirp, to like figure out what you had done the night before. Yeah. And that was like the scary part. It's like, I can't really put all the pieces together, but I know like there was a jackpot last night or some stuff went down, and I'm just waiting on like, what did I do this time?
Yeah, I would always wake up and make a phone call and like, what happened? What the heck? And 86, I got clean in 86. There were no cell phones or anything. Right. So you literally had to stand in your kitchen on your house phone and, why do I have scratches on my face? Like, what's going on?
Posters all over
like
South Philly that told you exactly what you did.
Why do I have scratches on my face? Like, oh, here's what you did. This is crazy, And then now you hang the phone up and you're like, now I have more crushing anxiety and depression. Yeah. What do these people think of me now?
Exactly.
That sort of thing.
100%. Exactly.
I used to have to like move on from entire like groups of friends.
Yep.
I was so sick. I used to do this thing where I would like subsect different groups of people that would cater to my sickness at the given time. Because eventually they would be like, buddy, listen, you need some help. Like, this is way out of control. I'd be like, all right, I'll see you in like 6 months. Right. And I'd move up to a different group of friends. Maybe it was up in Northeast Philly instead of the crew down in South Philly or wherever.
Stop rebranding yourself.
Yeah. I would just like take a step back. Hopefully they would forget about what was going on. And then I would come back around, after I felt like they had forgotten.
Definitely.
So I got to bring it up. I feel like, and I know this has happened all over the country, but like the opiate epidemic hit Philly so hard for us, and it still does, right?
Bad.
I feel like the other place that's been as heavily affected, at least at face value, is Mass, dude.
Absolutely.
And like you grew up in that, right? Like, you're a millennial like me, right?
Yeah. I'm part of the Oxy generation.
When did that start?
Yeah. So that's a great question because, I mean, it has a lot to do with where my addiction got to the point it got to. So in 2001-ish, 2001, 2002, I dropped out of high school just due to not showing up, the liquor and the Percocets and the cocaine, that stuff way surpassed me going to school, and just like the trouble I was getting into school, it really wasn't working. I was going to stay back. Too much pride, too much ego to like stay back a year in high school, not graduate with like the kids I grew up with. So I dropped out. I figured I'd get my GED when I could, and I started hanging around with guys that had stuff, right? Like my addiction didn't like fully take off yet. I would definitely consider myself like an alcoholic at that point, but like unbeknownst to me, right?
Okay.
So it's like, but I started hanging around with people that had things, right? And I thought like I sought after like external conditions to like fix me internally, right?
Yes.
So, the guy that's driving down Broadway and he has an Escalade with the system and all this stuff, I'm like, that's going to make me whole, right? That's going to make me, united with self, right? So like I went after those things, and having no high school diploma, no thoughts of like a real career. Like I got with the guys, and like what they did, they sold oxys,
Yeah.
And I'd pick up my packs and I'd sell oxys, and you know, my couple of my friends would get them down in Florida. They would drive them up, and I'd either piece them up or sell like smaller packs to like, you know, people I grew up with in the neighborhood and things like that. And like, I wasn't like no huge drug dealer. I made like party money. Like I had enough to like go out on the weekends and, you know, have some things, buy some new clothes and sneakers and be flashy and all that. And that lasted for a little bit, right? And you know, I'd only party on the weekends. I'd drink on the weekends. I was like more disciplined at that time. My real focus was like accumulating, you know, as much money as I could. And I play basketball up until this day. So one day I was actually playing basketball with my friends. You know, I come down, snap my ankle on someone's foot. And, you know, I'm not a go to the doctors type of guy, go to the hospital type of guy. Like it'll heal on its own.
Oh,
but
so you weren't using Oxy when you were selling it at all?
Not at all. Until this point, right?
Well, right.
Oh, until the ankle.
Yeah,
until the ankle,
but
right.
I guess my brain just assumes.
Yeah.
What were you selling, 80s?
I was selling 80s.
Wow.
But I wasn't using 80s. I hadn't touched one at the time.
Yeah.
I was literally just weekend warrior, alcohol, coke. Sometimes I'd eat like 5 Percocet 543s, you know what I mean? Just to feel that nice feeling.
And never touched the 80s?
Never touched
Why
the 80s.
Not?
Because my friends.
Yeah, you saw.
I saw them.
Yeah.
And it became like zombie land, you know? And
Yeah.
like friends that I grew up with that like were good athletes, I admired. You know, at the time I'm only 18, 19 years old, but like it's still like, you know, these kids were like stars in grade school and shit, you know what I mean? And
they killed off half our
So-
generation.
So you would sell them, but you wouldn't do them.
I wouldn't do them.
How's that make you feel right now as we sit here?
That I contributed to the opiate
Well, I mean,
epidemic? No.
I always like
feel
to
like
see.
he got
listen,
his. Yeah,
I know
yeah,
you've been clean a long time,
Yeah.
but you know feelings do linger. I mean,
Well,
you know,
once we
just
saw,
curious.
No, once I saw the ramifications of it, yeah. But you know, like I felt horrible about like the product and what it caused. But
Right.
at the same time, it's like I'm wrapped up in my own addiction. It's just like committing any other crime to
Right.
fuel it, right? At the time, so
Absolutely.
No, absolutely.
you can justify it and do all these things, but you know, like the fact of the matter is, like this stuff turned a whole generation into heroin addicts. You know,
Yeah.
and I'm one of them. You know, and like nothing that I obtained from, you know, using and dealing and things like that. I mean, well, dealing would satisfy like those feelings within me. So like that injury, right? I got a draw full of opiates in my possession. I know what 543s feel like.
Yeah.
I know what
What
like
are those, fives?
yeah, like 5 milligrams.
Yeah, those,
yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, I had those. Yeah, I used to love those, but I never got into like the opiates at the 80s at the time, and you know, so I started using, like I used them for pain, and then once the pain went away, like I stopped like intermittently. Like I would just like I saw my friends, right? So like it was more of like a fear thing that I would stop, and I wasn't using at the time, but I had that taste, right? It's like, you know, it's like a Rottweiler that like tastes some blood, you know. It has the taste.
Yeah, it awoke the beast.
It woke the beast, yeah. And like it came out to play, and like so I remember it was like the 4th of July, all the liquor stores were closed, and I'm like, man, I'm not using an 80. I'm not using an 80. I was like, if you had the perks, the 543s, I said to my buddy, I was like, I'll do those, but I don't want to get wrapped up. He's like, oh, it's the same thing. It's like taking, you know, it's like taking 5 of them, you know. So
It's true. I mean, he's
It
not
is-
wrong.
Right. Exactly.
so I blast off, you know, and I remember from that point forward, I don't even know if I remember, right? Everything just happened so quick, and you know, 2 years later, I'm a full blown IV heroin addict.
Oh,
you know,
yeah.
like smoking crack. You know, I remember one time my buddy owned a tanning salon. He found like what's probably like 5 grams of crystal meth. You know, that was the first time I tried meth. I didn't become like a meth addict. It wasn't like my thing, but it's more to like show like how it really, the substance has nothing to do with it, right?
Right.
It's just
Oh,
what the
of
substance
course.
produces for
Sure.
me, right? What that chemical produces for me. And for me, it like produces an immense amount of relief. Like I said, it just uncages me, right? It frees me from me. And like the opiate, like the Oxy 80, I mean, it's the first time that I actually experienced that like warm embrace. It was like putting like a warm weighted towel, like warm weighted blanket over me, and like that experience like still hasn't been replicated for me to this day. Like it provided me everything I wanted.
I've heard it explained like it's like you were back to being an infant and you were in your mother's arms and she was hugging you.
Right.
So you describe it as, a weighted blanket. What like I've heard it described many different ways, and it's something that you just can't feel again.
You can't feel again. And it's a chase, right? Like I'm constantly chasing and just like in life today, right? We're constantly chasing some type of feeling outside of ourselves, right? Whether it's another property, if it's more money in our bank account, women, things like that. I'm faithful to my wife my fiance. I'm dropping Freudian slips in there, but I gotta make a
I'm sure she'll like that when she hears it.
Yeah. So, that's well not mine, pal.
Yeah. But like, it's always searching for something that I think is gonna make me okay, right? But like, that's why mindfulness is so important. Like, I am okay. Yeah. My needs are met right now.
Buddy, you're more than okay.
More than okay.
You're doing pretty good.
Yeah, but you're only one day from not being okay.
Exactly.
All right? I mean, that's what we have to keep in the front part of our brain, not in the back of our mind.
Right.
Like, you're a day away from, like, I'm telling you, I could be in jail tonight in 9 hours.
Yeah.
It's 3:15 right now. I could be in jail by midnight. Seriously. So we're like a day away from losing like everything. You know what I mean?
I always just look at it as like, what am I filling the void with today?
Right.
Because there was a time where it was a stem and a bottle.
Mm-hmm.
And then there was a time where it was stuff. And then there's a time where it's a solution.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, there's only one right answer. You know what I mean?
Yep.
And that it can change at any point in time. Some days are great, other days not so great. You know what I mean? The good news is if I don't drink today, I still got the other opportunity to do the right thing tomorrow.
That's right.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
That's right.
And that's the best thing about feelings, right? Is that they change, right? And just because I feel kind of messed up today a little bit doesn't mean like I'm going to go to bed tonight and I'm going to feel the same way tomorrow. Yeah. So I'm not risking losing it all because of a feeling.
Absolutely. Well, you know now.
Yeah.
You know now.
Right.
Not to try to wait that feeling out. And we always say a day at a time. Some people say an hour at a time. Mm-hmm. Some people say a minute at a time. But that feeling that we all feel will pass if you let it.
Absolutely.
If you let your addicted brain take over, you're going to need relief right now. Mm-hmm. But if you allow your sober brain to take over, that feeling will pass and you'll get the better feeling to continue to do the right thing.
The right thing.
And now that's how you get another day.
Mm-hmm.
And of course you reach out to people, obviously.
Yeah.
If you're feeling that way, there's always somebody that could talk to you that you got your home group. You got people you could call, people you could talk you off the ledge.
Yeah, dive into service, help a newcomer, just try to be of service to others, pray, be present at my home group. The greatest act of service you could do, my sponsor taught me, is like be a consistent member at your home group. Because like when the new man comes in, they always see Sam in his seat, right? They see Vinny in his seat.
Right.
They see Mike in his seat.
Right.
They know that the program works if you stay. And like that's the biggest thing. Still showing up to my home group. My home group was Monday night. Like I'm not any better than my home group. My home's non-air conditioned, sweated.
I love it. Love it. That's old school.
Like old school, yeah.
I've sweated out in a few myself. Yeah.
But like still showing up, doing the little stuff. I can't get too big to do the little stuff.
Absolutely. Let me ask you. Whenever people get clean, and I always ask people this, there's something called a precipitating factor. What happened to make you get clean? Like, for instance, when I tell people my sobriety date is 8/15/86, they were like, oh my God, I wonder what happened on the 14th.
Yeah, right. Yeah,
so that's a precipitating factor. So what do you feel your precipitating factor was in making you go back to treatment that one last time that you just talked about?
Great question. No, that's a good question. So on May 21st, 2010, I left AMA from a facility. I got placed, right? So I'm a state facility type of guy, Mass Health, Medicaid, free beds sometimes I needed. I never had afforded the luxury to go to a premier treatment center. So When those facilities, you're just lucky to find further placement, right? Because a bed's not always available because they're backed up. They got a homeless population.
Dude, you're lucky to get a glass of water.
Yeah, exactly.
Sad.
Peanut butter sandwich.
Sad, but true.
Yeah. So, I was in it's called Tewksbury Detox. I was in Tewksbury Detox. They finally found me a bed for aftercare. I walked in. It was a TSS. It's called Transitional Services bed. So I went. It's next door. It's like in Tewksbury Hospital. Tewksbury Hospital is like a psych. It's like one of the oldest psych hospitals in the country. But they do some substance use treatment there. So I went to this TSS that I've been before, and I walk in there, and I'm just like, man, like just ungrateful, just ungrateful that I even have the opportunity, not thinking bigger picture. I'm like, the smell in there got to me. Like, I'm still like kicking my methadone from the detox. I'm like, you know what? Nah, I'm not doing it. So I was like, in my head, I'm like, I'll manipulate mom to get back in the house. I'll do something. I'll find my way. Like, I'm good with my words. Mom will let me back in.
Totally.
Yeah, even though the last 5-10 times she told me no.
And you got a plan B and C.
Yeah, I got a plan B. I got a plan C. I got a car waiting at the house because. But prior to this time, I had like 6 months clean, and I had made a few dollars. So I bought like a used car cash. So I had a car. I wasn't like fully, assed out yet. Like, I still had a couple things, no money, no job, but like I had a vehicle. So, I was like, I'll get my car. I'll figure it out. If she doesn't let me sleep there, I'll sleep in the car, whatever. It is what it is. I'm not staying at this place. So I hop on the commuter rail. I huff it down to North Station in Boston. Take the blue line from North Station to Revere Beach Station with a hockey bag full of clothes, all of my belongings in it, because this was going to be like, I'm going to stay in treatment long term, And long term back then was like, you're in treatment for like 9 months to a year. It was like people stayed in treatment. Got to mom's house, knocked on the door. Just let me sleep here tonight. I'll figure it out. I'll get back into treatment. I just couldn't stay. I might have said like I got into a fight in there. I made up some shit. So she wouldn't let me stay though. She'd gone to like Al-Anon meetings at the time.
Good for her. Wow.
Mom had some information.
Nice.
So it messed up my plan.
Shout out Mom Leggs. Dude.
Very nice. Mrs. Leggs.
Yeah, Mrs. Leggs. She had some information. So she said, no, you're not staying. I don't care what you say. I left with a bag of quarters for the payphone. Yeah. Call me when you get to detox.
So many bags of quarters.
Bags of quarters, right?
So many bags of quarters.
Call me when you get to detox.
Yeah.
So I proceed to drive to Burger King or Route 1 in Saugus. Call my dealer. My dealer meets me there. I get a few bags of dope. I get high in the bathroom. Once I'm off E, I order a burger, sit down. And I don't know, I think it's divine intervention, but once I was done with that burger, my key just would not appear. Like my key disappeared to my car. I had no key. I was like, where's this key? I'm looking in the dumpster. I'm looking in the garbage bags. Could not.
You just lost your car keys?
Lost my car keys. Yeah. Lost my car keys. So I'm like, damn, there goes plan B. I can't sleep in my car tonight. I'm like, I'm resourceful, but like I'm not like a sleep outside homeless. I'll sleep in my car. Like I'm not like that. I wasn't at that point yet, So
well, you're smart. That's really what it is. Yeah.
Tail between my leg, call up the detox, that I just left, well, prior to me going to the TSS, call up that detox, Danvers detox, got into detox. Not really knowing what the plan would be, and like you said, Vinny, like I just stayed one day at a time, like sometimes against my worst thinking, like against everything, outside factors that I wanted to run to or run from. Like I just stayed and stuff just started happening. Like the one thing I did when I was like, so I would follow like, all right, so I got to the detox, right? Now, at that point, I had nowhere to go. Mom said, yo, just call me from your next level of care. Every time I would be at my next level of care, all right, that's cool. Call me when you get to your next spot. All right, and I had to go somewhere. So I filled in for a bunch of like CSS programs, TSS programs like before. And there was one guy ahead of me. I was almost going to be like kicked out to the street because there was no bed for me. One guy ahead of me for the TSS that I got into, Lynn TSS, he declined the bed last minute. So I took the bed.
More divine intervention.
He declined last minute. I got to the TSS, and I had a girl on the outside. She wasn't answering the phone. She's probably with another guy or whatever. I was just like in my head about it. I started praying because I was just in pain, right? Because like at this point I'm like slowly losing everything, right? And I prayed, and like I'd work with my counselor, and my counselor just kept saying halfway house. You got to go to a halfway house. I would wheel and deal with her. I was like, no, I'm going to do the IOP. I'll get on the blocker. I'll get on naltrexone, and I'll do the IOP, and I'll be fine. Find me a sober house, and I'll do IOP. She's like, no, halfway house. In Mass, like the halfway house is like, it's a more structured like residential program.
Right.
It's different than outside the country, outside of the state.
Yeah,
so,
I get that.
Yeah, so a halfway house would probably be like similar to like what a PHP with housing is now.
Right.
It's
Makes
like
sense.
it's like a lot more intensive. You slowly find work. You slowly get your phone back and all that. So gabapentin was like new on the scene in terms of like being tested for in these programs. So like I applied for like the halfway houses. They were like, I was like, if whatever date comes first, if it's like, I don't know, whatever, the 25th of July, or the day they call and say a halfway house bed's open, I'm leaving either way, right? So whatever happens first, that's
you
when I'm
gave it
going.
up to God?
Yeah. So I gave it up to
Nice.
God.
Yeah.
So my God's a funny God. So
Yeah,
they
dude.
start testing at this halfway house. This halfway house is typically like a 3-month wait to get into. They start testing for gabapentin. Unbeknownst to all the clients that are in there, 13 clients get
Tossed. Yeah.
Damn.
They called me on a Friday. They said, "Oh, your bed opened up. You're set to come Monday." Now I'm like riddled with fear because it's like, all right, stuff just got real. Like I gotta go to this halfway house. I gotta get up every morning. I gotta make my bed. I gotta do all the things.
Do chores.
Do the chores. I gotta find a job.
Yeah.
Like I do really good in like the inpatient setting, but like because everything's
When you
done
have to do for yourself, it's a little different.
It's
Yeah,
a little different.
structured living is another animal.
Structured living.
That's where the boys become men.
It is.
It's 100% true.
Got there on the Monday though, signed up for the home group that night, same night, and my home group's still that Monday night home group, and best 6 months of my life being in that house.
Same, bro.
Best 6 months of my life.
Sometimes I wish I could go back and just play cards with the boys.
Play whist with the boys, maybe
Like
spades.
spades.
Yeah.
More than anything.
So in Boston they play whist,
Right, I
right?
played it with
Yeah.
family up here. I got family
Yeah.
in
But
Stone.
it's the same
thing as spades.
premise,
Mhm.
yeah. But like I miss those days,
Best days of my life,
It is.
without a doubt.
It really is. No.
Still close with all those guys.
Yeah.
Yeah.
See?
The
Yeah.
best days of my life. Life was so simple, but it was as complicated as it could be.
Right.
You know?
Right.
It
It's
was
as complicated-
complicated for me at the time.
Right.
Because I was living by a structure that was not my own.
Exactly.
You're
what I mean.
uncomfortable. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
It was all you could handle at the time.
Yeah.
So it seemed complicated. Probably wasn't.
Wasn't it all?
But it was all you could handle back then.
Do you know what's so crazy though? Is you asked him what his precipitating factor was, and all of this started because the guy lost his car key.
Right.
Yeah,
that's
it.
it. That's
Yeah, that's
exactly,
Yeah.
that
was it.
he's eating a hamburger,
Something-
couldn't
wouldn't
find
have-
his car keys.
And I wouldn't have entered treatment. And I wasn't even like, I don't know. Like people say you got to have willingness. I don't know. I think sometimes people say you got to have willingness. Sometimes it's like, sometimes God just does for you what you can't do for yourself too.
I know, man.
And I really believe that if you seek out a higher power, or if you like seek out alignment with a higher power, I don't know, sometimes God does stuff for you that like you just can't do for yourself. Because at that point, my level of willingness was like 0. It was just in treatment out of necessity, if that makes sense.
Yeah, definitely.
Oh yeah, it was just there.
You put a
because it
roof
was
over
cold
your head.
outside.
Yeah.
You got food and you had a roof
Yeah.
and a bed.
I talk to a lot of loved ones and parents and wives, and the most frequent question I get is, when is like enough? Like when is the day that everything ultimately changes, that they decide to take suggestions, that they listen, that they engage in treatment, that they engage in like our wishes? And I wish I could tell them anything.
There's no
dude.
answer.
There's none.
It's different for everybody.
Like, why didn't we die?
Right.
I think about that all the time. I
Right.
buried half my friends I grew up with,
Same. Yeah.
Why?
Why?
It makes no sense because I'm blessed to say, like, I haven't had the desire to drink or use drugs since May the 20th of 2016.
Let's go.
I just haven't.
Let's go.
Dude, I just haven't. I don't know why.
Yeah.
I can't even begin to tell you, but that's like, to me, that's like the one concrete way I can define a power greater than myself, because every day up until May the 20th, 2016,
That's all you wanted to do.
that's all I could do.
Yeah,
you
yeah,
know?
yeah.
And something happened.
That
It
was your
kind of
natural
breaks my
program.
heart, bro.
Yeah.
It kind of breaks my heart to think that like that happened for me, and like I wish it for so many more, you
Right,
know?
yeah.
And maybe their circumstances are different. Maybe my circumstances were the way they were so I could have that luxury.
So you could, support those people, right?
Right.
So that's why I always look at it as like, I'm always in a spiritual debt. Like I always owe a spiritual obligation to the program because I don't know why.
Yeah.
Why for me, right? You
Yeah.
don't know why for you.
No idea.
So it's like, hey, we don't know why it happened for us. Now let's like pay off our debt by like being of service to others, and I've tried to live by that as best I can. Life gets busy, and the more you stay sober, the more you stay clean, like the more stuff you have, and God blesses you with like an abundant life, and you have some things that can distract you from your primary purpose, but you can't let it block you from your primary purpose. Like I have to be able to fulfill that primary purpose to the best of my ability, a day at a time until, I'm old and, tired, I'm young and tired now, or I'm middle-aged and tired, but I have to show up for the little stuff. I got to meet the new guy. I got to take a call when it feels inconvenient. I got to do service when it feels inconvenient.
That's the good stuff, though.
That's the good stuff.
I mean, that's actually the good stuff.
Yeah.
That's the work that you need to keep you on the path that you've been on.
Absolutely.
You know what I mean? But like, we never know, like what Sam was saying. Like he takes these calls, and I take them too. About he's losing his family. Isn't that enough to stop? Well, we don't know. Everybody's different. Some people have to sleep in their car for a week before they look up to God and finally say, okay, I've had it. Some people have to lose their wives, their children, turn their back on them. We never know what it's going to take for you to look up and ask for help and have it finally click. I got my last rites once after a car accident, and you know what? I drank and did drugs for 19 more months.
Still,
the normal person, the normal thinking person would say, oh my God, I'll never drink again.
Right.
Me, I was like, I'm good. I don't have a problem dying. I had a problem living. You know what I mean? So we never know what it's going to take. But I can tell you this. The one thing that people never, ever, ever want to lose, they could lose their family because they know they might get them back. They could lose friends. They know they may get them back. They may lose possessions. They may get them back. They never want to lose their job.
Yeah.
It's the way they're able to drink and do drugs. They will do everything in order to keep their job. And a lot of the work that I do for the Machinists Union is I do it for all my union members, full time. And it's, I don't want you to lose your job.
Right.
I want to place you in treatment, in some level of treatment, so you don't lose your job. You know what I mean? Because these jobs are tough to come by. You know what I mean? Like, they're not making minimum wage, that's for sure. But it's always different for people in that we never know what it's going to take for you to finally look up to heaven and ask God for help.
Amen. I agree. Yeah. It's, for me, it's just like divine intervention happened for me. And like, that's why I lean on God, is because, and I don't even just like believe in God. Like I know God worked in my life to provide me with what I have today, and like just remove the obsession of drink,
Yep. Absolutely.
That's the biggest thing.
I remember having like such a hard time conceptualizing a power greater than myself early on. I used to like try to do the like fake until you make it thing, and I always drank, right? And it was just that, dude. It was the desire being gone for the first time ever. Like, that was enough, dude. Yeah. That was enough to know that like something greater than myself was at work. And I just like ran with it. And now I have a very interesting relationship with it today, which is continuing to develop even like 8 years in. You two have much more time than I do, and I'm sure the same applies to you. But like, yeah, man, conceptualizing God or a power greater than myself was so hard to stomach, and it happened right in front of my face.
Right.
I didn't have to do any work.
You
It just happened.
Yeah,
You know what I mean?
You didn't have to do any work. That's incredible, man.
No, I mean, I had to do a lot of work
Right.
in order to conceptualize
Right.
God.
You had to go through a lot
what
of...
I'm saying is, like, it was right there the whole time.
The whole
You
time.
know? Yeah.
But you had to go through a lot of crap first
I took
in
some
order for
shit,
you to
yeah.
actually see it.
Yeah.
That's the thing. We have to actually be able to see it, you
Right.
know?
So what's life look like for you today?
Today, my life is simple. I can overcomplicate my life, but my life is simpler than I like to believe most of the time. I'm a family man. I like to, spend all of my free time with my family. I'm still involved in a 12-step program. I sponsor men. I have a sponsor. I like to do the work. I like to do the 12-step work. I like to be of service. I do commitments. I do speaking events. I do public speaking as well, like community events and things like that. I'm gainfully employed. I have a wonderful job. I have, I'm part owner of a treatment center. My life's great, man. It's better than I could ever envision prior to my using. God has made my life full, abundant, and all I wanted when I was using, like, I remember just like looking out a window and being able to like walk to the Starbucks and purchase a coffee and not be dope sick was like monumental. Right? It was like huge. Or like, where are people going? They have jobs. Like, people got to wear like button-up shirts and blazers and stuff like that and go. Yeah. That's all I wanted, right?
You wanted some form of normalcy, it sounds like.
Normalcy.
Just to be what you would consider like a normal human being, going to work every day, getting up, grabbing a coffee, just going through, those normal type actions that we could never do as addicts and alcoholics. We were always after something. You had to get to this next point or whatever. We couldn't slow down enough to actually walk across the street and buy a Starbucks, whatever, and enjoy the moment.
Right.
That's a fancy coffee.
Yes, it is.
That's a fancy
For
I can buy
an
fancy
addict.
coffees
Mikey
today.
Leggs had big aspirations.
Mikey Leggs couldn't afford that coffee back in the day. He didn't have any money for that.
No,
I remember just being stoked that I like still had some money in my pocket at the end of the week. So I'd be good to eat breakfast tomorrow. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
I'd be like negative for days, right?
Yeah.
In the weeks, in the years.
Yep.
Sort of like, just even if it was like $6, you know what I mean? To go to somewhere just to eat breakfast and get that Starbucks coffee.
Or I remember like when I smoked cigarettes at the time, I quit a bunch of years back, but when I smoked cigarettes at the time, I could never smoke a cigarette when I was like dope sick, right? So like, cause I would gag and stuff like that. I just remember like in a halfway house when I was able to just smoke a cigarette and have a coffee, like fresh out of bed without coughing.
That's a feeling, man. It's a feeling. It's a good feeling. It's a good state of mind. It's a great state of mind.
Yeah.
And you were finally able to feel that.
Yeah. Just enjoying the small stuff in life,
That's what it's all about.
Yeah.
That was, 8 a.m, you're having a cup of coffee and a cigarette. There's nothing smaller, so to speak, but you're enjoying the moment. And that's what you're finally able to do when you kicked this and when you started working on yourself.
Yeah, 100%.
And that's what a lot of people can't feel. And that's why they need to go to treatment, get into the 12-step program, get a sponsor, because by the time you reach that 12th step, that spiritual awakening, mentally, you're in a really good place.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But listen, Mikey Leggs, my man, it was our pleasure to have you on Tenacious Recovery.
Absolutely.
Awesome.
We really appreciate it. You have any final thoughts or words for the crowd?
No, just my final thoughts is just never give up on yourself. If you've had many failed attempts in treatment or in meetings and things like that, just keep trying. You never know, like Sam said, you never know when that miracle is going to happen. And, you have that aha moment when the obsession to use is removed, so keep trying no matter how many times you failed. Like keep at it, man, because we need you, the program needs you, and we need more servants in here, You know, so stay
The program survives off the newcomer.
clean. That's right.
Without a doubt.
Yeah.
Sam, you have any closing thoughts?
I just want to thank you for doing this, brother.
Yeah,
you know, I know it was kind of shot in the dark, but that was awesome. I really
Thank you.
appreciate you coming on with us.
Definitely appreciate you, Mikey Leggs. To everybody out there, this is Tenacious Recovery. You must be tenacious. If you want to keep your sobriety, you need to do something every day to keep your sobriety. Think about that. But brothers and sisters of sobriety, thanks again for listening. And God willing, we'll see you next time.